Hello, fellow music nerds. Welcome back to Music Makers and Soul Shakers. I'm your host, Steve Dawson, coming to you from the Hen House Studio in Nashville, Tennessee. I'm a guitarist, songwriter, and producer originally from Vancouver, Canada. I love all aspects of making records, so I thought I'd make a podcast and bring in a slew of folks who've also made records in one way or another and yak about it with them. Each month I'll be bringing you an in-depth conversation with a new guest. It may be a musician, a songwriter, a producer, or an engineer, but each of these people will have a fascinating story to tell about their lives and their involvement in the process of being a music maker and or a soul shaker. Thanks for joining me, and feel free to reach out to me through the podcast website at www.stevedawson.ca. And now, here's another episode of Music Makers and Soul Shakers. Greetings, music nerds. Welcome back. Welcome to the ongoing Season 3 of the podcast. Hope things are going well for you out in your world. Hey, thanks for keeping in touch with me from out there. It's great to hear from people, from old and new listeners, and getting some feedback and ideas about guests and all kinds of comments and whatnot. Keep that up. It's great to hear from you. All the episodes of this podcast are brought to you from the Hen House Studio, which is my place here in Nashville, Tennessee. And this podcast is my way of bringing experiences and stories to you from people with stories to tell. It's a labor of love, and I do enjoy it, and I hope you enjoy listening to it. Now, on to this month's episode. My conversation with David Lindley went on a good solid length, and thusly I have split it up into two halves. Today you will hear part one, and 1 week from today, that is next Wednesday morning, you will hear part two. If you subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or whatever, it will be magically delivered to your podcast inbox 1 week from today. So make sure you subscribe and you will get that sent to you. David Lindley is one of the bucket list guys for me on this show. He's had his mitts on so many great albums, and he's always been one of my favorite guitarists and has always been a musically adventurous soul, searching for new outlets and sounds, and especially instruments and tones. He's embraced a fully do-it-yourself attitude to touring and recording, and has basically stuck his middle finger up all the way to the way the music industry currently works. Making albums on his own, only selling them at shows, not putting them online, not streaming them, and just generally being a cool dude all around. I've had the good fortune of opening for Dave a few times over the years and seen him play many more times than that, and he's always amazing. He was also a big inspiration for me getting into playing lap steel and Weizenborn about 20 years ago, and so I thank him for that. And I need to shout out, a big shout out to my good pal Marcus Vickert, who lives in Toronto, but I was good pals with Marcus many years ago in Vancouver. We both lived there, and he's the one that got me into David Lindley in the first place. Marcus used to work at a guitar shop in Vancouver that I frequented, and actually I went there a lot. It was called Not Just Another Music Shop, and it moved around a bit, but there was one spot when it was downtown that I used to go into all the time. And Marcus worked there. He was like a tech there and sort of worked behind the desk. And we realized that we were kindred spirits, and he shared all these bootleg tapes with me of David Lindley and Ry Cooder that he had from obscure shows in the 70s through the 90s. And one of them actually is a really rare version of John Hyatt's Bring the Family album that was originally rejected by the label. I don't know what label it was, but basically it's the same album that we all know of John Hyatt, Bring the Family, but with David Lindley and his El Rayo crew playing on the record instead of the people that play on the version that got released, which is Ry Cooder, Nick Lowe, and Jim Keltner. So this was a different version of all the same songs that are on the record. And he also got me in touch with David because they're pals still. And so David and I were able to connect. And so thanks to Marcus. And luckily for me, Lindley is another one of those guys that doesn't do a ton of interviews. And the ones that are out there tend to be missing out on all the good stuff. So hopefully we can rectify that here this week. If you're not familiar with David Lindley's music, I think you should probably go and do a little research first. But here's the condensed Cole's Notes version. Lindley came up in the 60s in California, and he was a little whiz on the banjo and fiddle, and won all kinds of fiddle contests and banjo contests as a kid. He learned a ton of crazy instruments that no one else was playing, stuck pickups on them, and rocked out in his band called Kaleidoscope. That's, I think, criminally underappreciated. Eventually, after that band, he hooked up with Terry Reid, who was almost the singer in Led Zeppelin. And if you listen to Terry Reid, he actually sounds quite a bit like Robert Plant, like an awesome, soulful, bluesy voice. And Lindley played in his band in the UK and made some records with him. Then from there, he went back to LA and hooked up with a fledgling songwriter there named Jackson Browne, who many people will know, of course. And he played on all of Jackson's early recordings, including the huge hits like Running on Empty, which display Lindley's blistering lap steel slide guitar work front and center. He started playing on a bunch of sessions in the whole 70s California scene, including huge records with Linda Ronstadt, who is also his cousin, weirdly. And he eventually turned his back on a successful session career, and instead he preferred to play and tour with his new groundbreaking band called El Rayo X. And that band made all kinds of great records. And if you don't know those, you got to go check them out. There's, I don't even know offhand how many, 5 or 6, and they are killer. They're so cool. And then in the 90s, he reinvented himself as a more acoustic player, making these incredible albums with percussionist Hanny Nasser and Wally Ingram. Those are harder to find. I don't think you can stream them. They're kind of not even around on YouTube and stuff. But I always just bought them at shows, and now they're hard to find. And I think you can order them on his website. But they were hugely influential to me learning the Weizenborn and just getting into all this crazy repertoire that he was digging into. So those are called Playin' Real Good, and then there's another one called Playin' Even Better. And then the one with Wally Ingram is called Twango Bango Deluxe, and that was also a big record for me. Go check them all out. Go to davidlindley.com to get info on his recordings, many of which are only available there. And you'll get some info on his tour dates there as well. He hasn't been touring much lately, but it looks like he's starting to pick up again a little bit, and we talk about that. And my conversation with David Lindley is coming up in just a minute. All right, now we need to take care of just a little bit of business before we get going. I want to tell you how you can get behind the show and support it. There's a bunch of ways to do it. Go to iTunes, subscribe, leave a comment, a good comment preferably, and spread the word. Tell all your friends. You can also financially support the podcast with a one-time donation, which is great, or by contributing monthly through our Patreon site. All that information is on my website at stevedawson.ca. You go to the podcast page, and right at the top are the 2 ways to contribute to the show. So if you want to consider doing that, that's a big help. Also, this year we have t-shirts and maybe some other swag a little bit later as the season progresses. That's also at the same website, stevedawson.ca, podcast page. It's all right there at the top. Any of those ways that you feel inclined to help out the show would be greatly appreciated.
Hi, how you doing, Steve?
I'm doing very well. How are you?
I'm doing okay.
Oh, good.
I'm down here in the rain.
It's probably good when that happens around there, isn't it?
Yeah, well, sometimes it is. Yeah, everything grows and then everything burns, you know.
That's how it goes.
It's pretty much.
Honestly, like with you, I'm not 100% sure where to start because there's so many facets to your career that I'm a fan of and that I'd love to hear about. But maybe we could start by talking about yourself as a player and some of your background. Like I know that you were kind of a young champ on the Bluegrass Festival scene in the early days on banjo and fiddle, and I've seen you play fiddle, but I've never seen you play banjo. And somehow I can't really imagine you playing like traditional Scruggs style banjo. Maybe you could talk about that, you know, your first instruments and what kind of music you were playing.
Yeah, it was my first instrument. Well, it goes all the way back to when I was 4. You know, and I had a violin and a piano, and had access to a piano, and I used to, you know, bang on that, and you know, and then I got a hold of my dad's ukulele,
yeah,
and started playing that, and he said. You know, well, we'll get you a baritone ukulele. So I got a baritone ukulele, and then from then on, it was, you know, one thing after another that had strings. So it was pretty good. You know, the banjo was. I've been listening a lot to the Kingston Trio, and there was a guy at the high school where I went who was really good on the 5-string, and he had studied with a bunch of different teachers and stuff, and he got Pete Seeger's style down pretty well, and I learned that, and then from then on,
okay,
I met a guy named Walt Pittman.
Yeah.
Who was the guy who invented the Scruggs tuners?
Oh.
Yeah, he was a friend of Earl, and Earl would send him, tapes and stuff, and he would learn all these things, and I met him down at Bernardo's guitar shop in East LA, and this kind of Santa Claus guy came in with a brown banjo case with a pink lining, and it had a Gibson Master Tone in there. And he said, "Are you sure you want to look at this?" And I said, yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, break it out. So, and that was it. It was one of those defining moments. And I picked that thing up, and I saw all these things, and that's when it started out. And I listened to everybody.
Yeah.
I had access to records and
what was your access to those? Like, were your parents really into music?
It was Berry and Grassmuck music. They were a big music store in Pasadena.
Okay.
And I used to work there teaching banjo and fiddle and all kinds of different things. And fiddle, I just kind of naturally picked up. I wanted to win the fiddle contest, so I learned a couple of tunes and did that. So it worked out pretty good. And
so you were picking it up really fast, and you were going in competitions and winning them?
Yeah.
When you were 6 and 7 years old?
No. This was about 14, and I was from 14 years old on, and I had access to a guitar, and then I got my own. My uncle was Ricardo Montalban, the guy.
What?
Yeah, he's my uncle.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Your dad's brother?
No, he married my dad's sister.
That's crazy.
Yeah, that's it. He helped me get my first guitar. He says, you have a guitar? He used to play guitar and sing at Christmas.
Really? And
he was really, really good. So he said, "Oh, we'll get you your guitar." So my dad and he got together and plotted and schemed, and then I ended up with a guitar from Bernardo's guitar shop in East LA, and I used to go down there all the time. I'd buy tenor banjos and have Pilo put a neck on them, And
he was like a tech down there that you were in cahoots with?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, he was Candelario Delgado's brother, Porfirio Delgado. He was a guitar maker, really, really good guitar maker. Jose Feliciano plays one of his guitars.
Wow.
And he was a real, really good guitar maker. He could make anything. So can you make a 5-string neck? Oh, yeah. I do those all the time for Mr. Chase out in Claremont. And I said, oh, good. So there's this interconnection. That's kind of when it started.
Okay.
Was that, the banjo 12-string guitar kind of thing.
Well, the interest of the banjo to you was more through like the Pete Seeger folky kind of sound than the Earl Scruggs bluegrass?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it was until I met Walt Pittman, and then that's when the 3-finger style, that took over, and I went and I got I had a bunch of records of stuff of the old time, real serious old time Roscoe Holcomb,
I love that stuff.
Aubrey Ramsey,
Doc Boggs,
and Snuffy Jenkins, and all these pre-bluegrass banjo players. So I learned all that stuff. And then I heard Eddie Adcock, the country gentleman, and he was just amazing. And I learned as much of that as I possibly could. And then,
were you actually playing in bluegrass bands?
Yeah, we had a bluegrass band. We had me and Dick Hargraves and a couple of different people, and we ended up with Richard Green playing fiddle.
Okay.
And then it progressed in different members of the band, and it was Richard Green. He'd play fiddle, and he would win the fiddle contest, and and we got to be good friends. And he showed me a bunch of stuff, and he learned from Scotty Stoneman,
Okay.
who was one of the best players. Yeah, the Stoneman family, and he was one of the best players around. So I got as much of that as I possibly could, and I learned off records, and people would show me different things. And there was a guy named Mike McClellan who was a kind of local whiz, and he could play everything. He played every instrument, and he would do shows at this place called the Cat's Pajamas.
Oh yeah.
In Arcadia, yeah. And I'd go down there and I'd hang out there. I'd talk to Mike, and he showed me a bunch of things. Tony Jackson's fiddle,
Amazing.
bowing style, which was the bluegrass style that everybody used, and I learned that. He said, "Oh, you got to learn this." I said, "Okay, I'll learn that," and then I just took it and ran. And
were you finding that you were drawn more to the banjo than the fiddle, or were you just into everything?
I was into everything.
Okay, so when you were playing with those bands, would you swap around and like you'd play fiddle on one song and banjo on another? And
oh yeah,
okay,
oh yeah.
What about like flat picking guitar? Were you into that at all?
Not really. I was. I'd go see Clarence White all the time.
Nice.
He was with the Kentucky Colonels or the Country Boys. Before they were the Kentucky Colonels, they were the Country Boys, and that was Leroy McNeese on dobro, Billy Ray Latham on five-string banjo, Roland White played mandolin, and Clarence White played guitar, and Eric White or Roger Bush played the bass. And I used to go see those guys all the time, and they were South El Monte.
I go and see Roland White all the time here. He plays at the Station Inn, and he's still doing it, man. It's incredible all these years later.
Yeah, he was when Clarence got hit by that woman in the parking lot at that club where they were playing. That's when Clarence died.
Right.
He saw the whole thing.
Oh my God, can't imagine.
Yeah.
Can't imagine.
Yeah, that was really awful.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the White brothers were the kind of bluegrass standard.
Was he about your age, or is he a lot old? He's older than you, right?
I'm not too sure about that.
Oh, okay.
I'm 74 now.
Okay.
I think he's still he's a little bit younger than me.
So you were seeing those guys, and they were kind of your peers, I guess, and you were playing around a lot.
Yeah.
Were you like touring with any of those bands at the time, or was it just sort of local stuff that you were mostly involved in?
No, it was more or less local stuff. I was going to high school, so I kind of had to stick around, and during the summer I'd go play, and we'd play different places, the Troubadour and the Ash Grove and Cat's Pajamas and stuff like that. We did a thing every night there.
Yeah.
So
wow, every night.
Cat's Pajamas.
Amazing.
Yeah. It turned out, anybody could get up and play. Yeah. So they would do that.
So can you, like, your music over the years has involved so many influences, more than just, string band and bluegrass music.
Yeah.
Can you tell me a bit about, like, how old were you when you started hearing things like reggae and dub and blues and rock and roll that has also been a big part of what you do?
All of that stuff came later. It was bluegrass music and old time music was first, and I would listen to everything. I listened to Ravi Shankar and Uday Shankar, and when I was really little, I was like 6 and 7 years old when I heard Ravi Shankar or Uday Shankar.
Is that Ravi's brother or something?
It was his uncle.
Oh, okay.
And Robbie started out playing with this uncle's ensemble, and then from then on, I heard the first World Pacific record, and my dad got it, and then I got it, and I got it through the music store where I worked, and that was it. It was as soon as the the sitar and the vina, and then I said, "Oh, what's this other instrument? The vina."
Yeah.
Okay, and I picked that up, and then I listened to Mohammed Al-Bakar and everything,
Yeah.
oud music from the Middle East, and everything just went all at once.
So where were you hearing? Like, where would you have picked up recordings that featured the oud? Like, where would you even find those records at that point?
At the music store where I worked.
So they actually had that kind of stuff in circulation at that point.
Yeah, and there was a guy in there who would order stuff, and they had a whole section on that. And then, of course, I checked out Tower Records. And Tower Records had all kinds of stuff. And I'd go in there and I'd just make a deposit. I wouldn't take anything out of there. I'd just go in there and give them all the money I made. and I would have records. Man, I had all kinds of records.
Yeah.
And I'd listen to them and try to figure out what was going on. And then that was when the Kaleidoscope started.
Yeah, right. So Kaleidoscope kind of came out of your immersion in bluegrass, and like when I hear the early Kaleidoscope stuff, which is some of it's sort of available in various forms. It's hard to know what's official and what were bootlegs or whatever. Like I don't know what you intended to come out, but you can hear a lot of it now. But you were like, I can hear your playing in there, like on the oud and guitar and stuff, and like recognize you totally, even at that point and I'd imagine you were like 17 or 18 at that point.
About.
So can you tell me a bit about how forming that band and what you were trying to do with it? And like, it definitely was a rock band at the heart, but you were playing all this cool, crazy world music too. And so maybe tell me a bit about that.
Yeah, I had, I could check out different kinds of guitars and amplifiers and stuff at this music store, Barry and Grassmick.
Yeah.
And Standell was really, really good. I checked out those things.
Yeah, those are
the early Standells, and I got to know Frank Garlock, who worked down there, and he turned me on to all kinds of amps and Standell tube amps, the old ones that were made in the garage in Almaty. Yeah,
a lot of the steel players were using those, right? Like the Western Swing guys.
That was the best steel amp there was. The single 15, and then you have the preamp in the top of the amp, and then in the bottom of the amp on rubber kind of insulation, you'd have the amp section.
Okay.
Of the amp, and those things were the best pedal steel amp in the world.
Yeah. So I noticed like there's even some footage of you guys playing, and you're playing like I think there's a song where you're playing a bouzouki, and I can see that you've got in there and like there's a volume knob on the bouzouki. So you were probably doing that yourself, right? Like were you taking like DeArmond pickups and stuff and sticking them into those instruments?
Oh yeah, we did everything. Yeah, we put the first piezo electric pickups were Barkus and Berry, and when Barkus and Berry was like a hi-fi store.
Oh.
They had hi-fi stuff in
really?
There. Yeah. HI-FI.
Yeah.
And they had that stuff in there. And Len Barkus was in the back. He was messing around with all these different kinds of pickups. And Frank Garlock turned us on to Len Barkus, and he would put pickups in instruments. We would take things down to him, and he would put pickups in them. And so, oh, this is good. Oh, you ought to have one of these pickups, that you could stick on any instrument.
Right.
and then they did that, and they put this, and they came out with the first guitar pickup. I still have it. It's in a Gibson guitar case someplace, and it's like number 2.
Whoa.
And it's just 2 pieces of aluminum with an element in between it, and they're glued together, and then you bolt it down to an instrument, and it plays, And then from then on, it was that whole piezo kind of pickup thing that you could put on anything. So that was a real liberating thing for us. You could put it on the oud or the bouzouki or the saz, and it worked out real well.
So were you guys trying to elevate those instruments into like a rock band setting, or was it just?
Yeah.
So you were playing them loud.
Yeah, I had my Gretsch solid body, and I had a Gibson fretless Wonder Les Paul Custom with 3 pickups, and then we play oud and saz and bouzouki, in with that stuff, and with drums and electric fiddle or harmonica and all that, and it worked out really well.
Yeah.
And we played in San Francisco and Los Angeles, and played all over the place. The Newport Folk Festival in '67, I think it was, and it just went on from there.
Were you touring and stuff with that band?
Well, most of we'd kind of center in New York around the Albert Hotel, which was at 10th and University, and we had then we'd go and play up in Boston, and then in different places and stuff. But mainly it was in New York, and that was wow. It was a long time. It just we kind of lived there. 10th and University at the Albert, and we'd rehearse in the basement, and the lady who ran it was really wonderful.
Okay.
She let us rehearse, and so. And we kept going and got bigger gigs and stuff like that, and then we stopped kind of, and then different members of the band changed around and got into a whole different thing, and then I said, oh well, I'm gonna go do this. I'm gonna play with Linda Ronstadt and Terry Reid. I went to England and played with Terry.
Yeah, can you tell me about what made you move to England after Kaleidoscope? That's sort of
I heard Terry at the Sky River Rock Festival up in Seattle, and I said, oh boy, this guy's good.
Yeah.
This guy is really good, and the guy Chesley Milliken was his manager.
Okay. And
Chesley, but we knew him from Magic Mushroom, which was a club on Ventura Boulevard. Okay. He opened up, and it was where the Allman Brothers, when they were the Hourglass, they that's where they would rehearse.
Oh, okay.
And they played there all the time, and it was Chesley was a big center of everything. Mm-hmm. Everything he touched kind of turned to gold. So we had him managed the Kaleidoscope for a while, and then he went to England and managed Terry Reid, and I gave him a call about the time the Kaleidoscope broke up, and I said, yeah, I'd like to play with Terry.
Okay.
And he said, oh yeah, that's good. That's what he said. Okay.
Really?
And you
got the gig.
Yeah, I got the gig, and we went on from there, and we got Bruce Rowlands from the Grease Band, and Chrissy Stewart from the Pretty Things, and we played 4. There's 4 of us. It was me and Terry and Bruce and Chris Stewart. Yeah. And that was a great band, boy.
Now,
that really smoking.
Is there a record?
Of that particular band, I don't know if that exists or not. I haven't seen Terry in a while, and I would like to see if recordings of that band exist. I don't think they do. The next band was with Lee Miles and Alan White, who is Yes. He played drums with Yes.
Oh, right. Okay.
After us, but that band that was really the best band. And Lee Miles played with Ike and Tina Turner, and Alan was just fabulous. He was great.
Yeah.
He and I. Yeah, we got into all kinds of trouble. Boy, oh man, that's like
like what? What kind of trouble?
oh, it's bad stuff. We went to Amsterdam, took acid on the Queen's birthday, and it was carnival.
Oh my God! You know what? I've been to Amsterdam on the Queen's birthday. It's crazy. Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's unbelievable. And we had a hotel. We were playing a gig there in Amsterdam, and we went early. So had a couple of days to kill. So we got into all kinds of trouble. Me and Alan, we went to this Indonesian restaurant, took acid. Okay, we're in an Indonesian restaurant and on acid, and he decides to sample the condiment tray with all this hot stuff from Indonesia, and he got I've eaten the hottest thing in the world, and he went into the bathroom and he got sick, and it was this awful thing. I'm okay now. And he came out, and we went out, and the first thing we saw was a neon sign shop. That was the first thing we saw when we walked out the door. Right next door to the Indonesian restaurant was a neon sign shop. And I said, this is going to be good. So then we walked off into the night, and we found the bumper cars.
Oh my God.
So here we are. Yeah, the bumper cars with a lot of juice flowing through there. and Alan almost got killed. He stepped off that thing onto the floor. They turned it off, and then it was downhill from there because we went to the Paradiso Club.
I know it.
Yeah. We went there upstairs and watched these guys play Go and chess and all.
Fascinating.
It was unbelievable, and it was. He was a real bad influence on me.
So that was still with Terry Reid, where you guys were both in his band?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah, we were on Terry's band, and we played the Paradiso then.
Yeah.
After that 2 days of being insane, then we played the Paradiso, and we played places in Germany and Austria and Switzerland.
So with Terry,
good.
Terry Reid, what were you playing guitar with him at that point, like slide guitar and stuff? Or
yeah,
okay.
Yeah, slide guitar. That was the first slide guitar stuff.
So tell me a bit about how you got into slide and like what you were into at the time, and that's such a big part of what you do now. Like maybe you could talk a bit about that.
Yeah, that was a electric slide guitar I saw when I was with the Kaleidoscope. This is towards the end of it. I saw Freddie Roulette play.
Oh yeah.
And I saw him play, and I went, "Oh, holy shit! This is really good. This is really good stuff." And he was, Freddie Roulette.
I do.
You know how he plays.
Yeah, he
plays all that Alvino Ray
totally.
stuff. And then he plays all this other stuff too.
Yeah. Yeah.
I want to do this, and I talked to him, and he said, "This is what you get. 8 strings, that's a little much. You get a 6 string, and then you a national. You get a national, and and he showed me some things, some different techniques and things, and I said, okay, I got it. Oh, you got it. I said, oh yeah, I got it. So I went and I bought this national electric slide guitar down in Hollywood. I took it home and I shut everybody out, and that's what I did. Long time, and then I took it to England and started playing with Terry Reid, and And that's more or less when it started. At the end of the Kaleidoscope, the beginning of Terry Reid is when the slide guitar started, and then from then on. And Chesley was also friends with Jackson Browne.
Yeah.
So I met Jackson through Chesley Milliken, who was Terry Reid's manager, and he was connected with the Grateful Dead and later on.
Yeah.
With them, and then he was connected with everybody. So
when you say you were getting into slide guitar through Freddie Roulette, and he was showing you stuff, like you're talking about lap steel here. You're not playing bottleneck at this point. You're playing lap steel.
Oh no, I have never played bottleneck.
Okay.
I can't play bottleneck. You got your Rycooter, that's all you need.
Yeah.
That's all you need is Rycooter on the bottleneck guitar, and that was it. And so I one of the things about Freddie Roulette that was amazing is that he would play it like a lap steel guitar, and I went, okay, this is good.
Yeah.
This is kind of a different thing, but I can do this.
Right.
And so I picked up the 6-string and took it and played it with Terry, and then I played it with Jackson Browne, and then.
If you were listening to records and you must have been learning stuff at some point after Freddie Roulette had sort of put his mitts into you. What were some of the records that you were learning from that were a big influence for you on the lap steel?
Earl Hooker.
Yeah.
Earl Hooker. He had in fact, Freddie played in this band, and he was really good. And I got turned on to a whole kind of different world of this Chicago kind of slide guitar and different things, and Sacred Steel, and I checked this stuff out. I said, this is really good. You can do all kinds of things. And then I would, depending on what Jackson would need in his songs and all that stuff, I'd say, I got something for that. I got something for that. Let me play this. And then he said, yeah, that's good. Okay, and then we would do that for a while. For 7 years we did that.
Tell me a bit about your stint with Jackson Browne. So you came back from England with Terry Reid. You got a gig with Jackson Browne. He was just a kid starting out at that point, right? Like you were playing with him from the beginning, right?
Yeah, right from the beginning. I played a gig with him at the Troubadour, and I played with him at. We did a gig at the Magic Mushroom in Cambridge.
Okay.
Chesley started this club there, the same as the club on Ventura, except really small. And then we played a gig there, and I said, "This really works good. I'll be back pretty soon." I left England and went. I took my wife and daughter and who had come over. Mm-hmm. They were living in England. We were going to stay there.
Oh, okay.
It was the Vietnam War. I says, I'm not going to do that.
Yeah.
So we were going to live in England, and you get homesick and all that stuff. And I had heard Cajun music, Doug Kershaw and all this stuff. And I said, oh no, I want to know. We're going to do this. So I went back and started up and got a gig with Jackson, and that was it.
Yeah, cool. So how much recording, I know Kaleidoscope was doing some recording, and we've talked about Terry Reid maybe not making a record. With Jackson, you started making records pretty, right from the beginning of his career. How much studio experience did you have at this point?
I had pretty much studio experience. Terry Reid made a couple of albums. One of them was called River, and we made that towards the end of that band, and that was at Olympic Studios and Island Studios, and I got to know Chris Blackwell, what was going on there.
Yeah.
And all, when you were in England in those days, 69, 70, and 71, reggae was all over the place.
Okay.
And the Bob Marley and the Wailers, they were just starting out. So I heard the early stuff. I got a bunch of reggae records.
Yeah.
And Trojan label reggae label. They had a whole bunch of records, and I got them.
What were some of your favorites?
Oh yeah, Desmond Decker and the Aces. That was the first thing I heard, and then I heard the Pioneers and the Rudies and the Greyhounds. It was a huge thing in England at that time.
It had a huge impact on you because it's been a part of your music.
Oh yeah,
ever since El Rayo X. I don't know if it was before, but you hear it on those early El Rayo records, and then it stuck with you. So that must have had a huge impact on you.
Oh, it was giant. Yeah, I heard that, and I went, oh, that's man, they sing just like bluegrass.
Right.
These guys listen to all those radio stations there in Nashville and New Orleans. And they got a lot of the techniques of that, and a lot of that technique was bluegrass music. And I these 3-part harmonies and all that stuff. I said, oh, this is good.
Yeah,
let's do this for a while. So I put a bunch of stuff together when I was playing with Jackson at the time, and he produced a record. It was that first El Rayo X Blue record.
Yeah, man, it's one of my favorites of all time.
Yeah, mine too. And that was I got a bunch of musicians together, from all the people that I'd met in the studio and all, I played on all kinds of things when I got back. And Reggie McBride on the bass, and Ian Wallace I had heard with Lonnie Mack's band.
Nice.
And I said, oh, this guy's good. This guy is rock solid. So I get him and get this guy, George Pierre Bonaparte, Babu, and got him. And
he was on percussion, right?
He was on percussion, and he also played accordion, and he wrote songs and stuff. Yeah, I had Babu on the timbales and timbalitos up in front, and Ian in the back, and Jorge Calderon on the bass, and Bernie Larson on rhythm guitar, and that was it. And then we started that machine, and that learned to feed itself. And we went everywhere.
If we talk specifically about that Blue record, can you tell me what the sessions were like? Like if you actually think back to the process.
Oh man, they're really good. It was based around Greg Ladani, who was a recording engineer for Jackson, and he said, "Oh, I want to do this. I want to do this album." So we did it in the studio where we recorded Jackson stuff.
Oh,
Record One and Sunset Sound, not Sound Factory on Selma. It was a studio run by Val Garay, and he and Greg are really good friends, and Val had all kinds of really good equipment, and Greg was kind of the second engineer, and he wanted to do this project. Yeah, the Sunset Sound Factory sessions, those were mostly overdubs, and the actual sessions.
Oh,
actually, we did them in both places. We experimented around a little bit, and we got the same sounds.
Okay. When you guys were making that record, was it essentially a live performance? Like the band was all playing together, all in the same room and stuff. Like how the interesting thing to me is like they sound like they have that record in particular has a really live energy, but it also sounds quite produced and like kind of in tune with a lot of other recordings that are of that era. So I'm just wondering, like, how were you doing a lot of overdubs, and were the sounds pretty live and raw, or were you spending a lot of time on that kind of stuff?
It was essentially we do record the song first, and I would do a pilot vocal, which ended up in a lot of cases being the main vocal on it,
the keeper.
And you get a lot of microphone leakage, and then there were some tunes that you had to start from scratch and record a different way, and that was, and then overdub on it. I would overdub things and solos and redo a guitar or one of those things, and I was experimenting with the Dan Electro guitars and the chorus and stuff, and playing with Ry Cooder.
Yeah, right.
And I said, oh, this is good. This is a good sound.
Thank you so much for listening to part 1 of my conversation with David Lindley. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast, and you will be notified when part 2 is available, which will be 1 week from today. That's next Wednesday. You will get part 2 of this episode with David Lindley. Don't miss it. Thank you. See you then. Thank you for listening, everybody. The Music Makers and Soul Shakers podcast was recorded in Nashville, Tennessee at the Hen House Studio. You can visit us online at www.stevedawson.ca. As always, I would like to thank Jeremy Holmes in Vancouver, BC for his help with research, and we'll see you next month for another gripping episode of Music Makers and Soul Shakers.